Hi there, this is a session about urban survivor farming. It's narrated by Andrew Pott and the video editing has been done by Francois Hayden. Okay, let's start off, class. Who is this gentleman here? That's right, that is JFK, the President of America, and during his inauguration speech he had some powerful words, and those read as follows: "My fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." Essentially, he's basically saying to people, the government can't do everything for them. People also have to do things for themselves. Now, what do we at Farm for Real say? Something similar. We say, fellow South Africans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for yourselves, in a way that is good for you and the country. So what can you do for yourselves? What we're talking about here is learning to grow your own food. All of us eat, all of us need good nutrition. So, why is this important? How will it help you, and how will it help the country? Maybe spend some time with a teacher and discuss these before you proceed. We would like to change the word South Africans into South Africans, because we can. So let's talk about survival in urban areas. Firstly, what is the difference between an urban and a rural area? The pictures over here depict it. In a rural area, there's a lot more space available, so you can grow crops, and you can have cattle, things like that. The picture on the left is from Google Earth, and it's actually a screenshot of the Injewa Primary School in Soweto. And this is very common to any neighborhood, a city neighborhood. What is the difference between the two? Firstly, there are more people in the cities than there are in rural areas. And this is a global trend where people are moving away from the rural areas into the cities in search of jobs and better opportunities. There's less space in the urban areas. There's more hard surfaces, so you'll see a lot of concrete and roads, things like that, which obviously make it impossible to grow crops in the conventional way. And what is very interesting is that the people in the urban areas actually often have poorer nutrition than the people in the rural areas. And that's because of the type of foods they're eating. Now, when we want to visualize survival, we're talking about survivor urban farmers. We're not talking about this gentleman over here, John Rambo. What we're talking about is you. And I'd like you to take a look at this and see how you could change this picture yourselves. So here we have the urban area, and as we zoom in, we can see many open spaces. These where the red dots are, where crops could be grown, but they're not being grown currently. Why is that? There is enough heat in the form of sunlight to grow crops there, so why are the neighborhoods not growing crops? Many of the people in this area are unemployed. So if you take a look at this, on the left we've got a box which is 1 meter by 1 meter in dimensions. It can fit into a very small space. On the right hand side we've got pots, and we've got bottles which have been cut open, which can house plants. Those could be deployed to those open spaces. So what you're seeing there is very possible. There could be boxes with vegetables in them, and that's what we're trying to inspire. So, who of you wants to become an urban survivor farmer? Let's just discuss firstly what you need if you do want to become one. It starts with you. Without you, nothing is going to happen. So you are it. You are the one who's going to help put the vegetables where those red dots are. Continue to remind yourself, if it is to be, it is up to me. You have to make it happen. The next one is education. If you are committed, you still need a good education or knowledge of how to do things. Now, what powerful words did Madiba have to say about education? He said, education is the most powerful weapon with which you can use to change the world. Note the word you. Just like we are saying, ask what you can do for yourselves. So really, education is key, but you are responsible for educating yourself and then applying that education and that knowledge. So you, with inspiration and education and determination and follow through, is equal to success. Farm for Real, we aim to educate and inspire. That's what we're about, and that's what this video is about. We would like you to capture video footage of your trials and tribulations, your successes, which we will upload to our platform so we can share the knowledge with others. Failures are also a form of knowledge. Tell people what you did that didn't work out as much as you tell people what you did that did work out. We have a website, farmforreal.com, and we will upload the information there. Furthermore, in education, what we see is there's two types. One is there's the push, where the teachers and parents are trying to push information into your head, and the other one is pull, where you willingly search for knowledge. And this is the one that we would like you to chase after. Be hungry to learn. Excuse the pun, of course we're talking about vegetables. Soon you may be writing the books. Right, now that we have you with a bit of education, the starting point is that you need to grow some crop. And for that you need seeds, plant cuttings, or scraps. What do we mean by these things? Okay, well, seeds you probably know quite well. Cuttings, where you cut a piece of a plant off and you put it in water or in the ground and it starts growing. And then scraps is where bits of vegetables that have been cut off can be planted and will grow. What are the difference between these options? Bear in mind, if you want to be a survivor farmer, you want the crops to grow as fast as possible and with the highest probability as possible. Which options would you go for and why? Talk about it with your teacher. Some important things to know is that if you are going to plant seeds, you have to know when to plant them. Some seeds like to germinate or need to be germinated in spring, some in summer, and some in autumn, and some in winter. On our website, we will upload information which can try and tell you which crops can be grown when or which can be planted when. You also need to know how long it takes for the crop before it produces crops. Some take literally 2 months, others can take 6, 8, 10 months. Some important things to know is that seeds don't last forever. So if you find a very old seed, it might not germinate because literally it has just run out of energy. You can harvest your own seeds. So, for example, if you plant even a spinach and you don't harvest the spinach, it'll actually what we call bolt and it'll create seeds. You can harvest those seeds and plant the seeds. General rule, don't plant a seed 5 times deeper than the size of the seed. It takes energy for the seed to try and grow. If you push it too deep in the soil, it just simply isn't going to have enough energy to get its head out the soil. Bigger seeds generally germinate better. So for a given type of seed, so if you're dealing with beans and you put all your bean seeds on the table, pick out the big ones because the big ones are probably going to grow better. You can harvest your own seeds, tomatoes, pumpkins, peppers, etc., etc. Here's a picture, for example, of a pepper, and clearly you can see the seeds inside. You just need to dry them, and then you can germinate them, and you will have plants. Avocado, pears. And what's interesting is that avos can also be grown in very small areas. If the roots can't grow far and wide, the size of the tree is constrained, but it will still produce fruit. How to germinate seeds. Germinate means getting them to grow. Has got nothing to do with germs. So here it is. You take your seeds, you take some newspaper, you put the seeds inside the newspaper, you close the newspaper up, you get some water, you pour a little bit of water on so that it's just damp, not wet. You then place the newspaper in a plastic bag. It can be a Checkers bag or what have you. The plastic bag just prevents the water from evaporating over time. And then in a couple of days' time, when you open it up, you will see your seeds starting to germinate. That's then ready to pop in the ground. You can choose then the options or the seeds that are showing the best potential. The second one is cuttings. I'm going to focus particularly on tomatoes. Not all plants will grow from cuttings, but luckily tomatoes do. How does it work? The first thing is you can snip off one of the side branches of a tomato plant. There it's gone. You then clean it up. In other words, you remove all the flowers from the cuttings, you cut off any leaves on the lower part of the stem. There it's been shown. You place the cuttings in clean water and wait until the roots form. When the roots are about 2 inches or 5 centimeters long, you put the plant into potting soil. How easy is that? Anyone can do that. Looking at scraps. So here, for example, is the tip of the onion with the roots. All you have to do is plant those little guys and they will grow. Just take a second to look at the size of an onion seed compared to the tip of that onion. The size of the seed is so small. The onion, on the other hand, that is grown and has the tip cut off, has roots formed already and has got a large amount of energy in that tuber. So the probability of success of the scrap is quite high compared to the seedlings, or the seeds, which when planted are called seedlings. You can also do this with potatoes. You can see the eyes of the potatoes. You plant them with the eyes facing up. Carrots, beetroot. There are many. Once you have got your seeds, you now need to plant them in something, a growing container or some form of infrastructure. What are some options? Well, we can have small containers, little pots, also the 2-liter cool drink containers which are cut open. You can go larger and then have your square foot garden or some raised bed garden, and we advocate the square foot garden method, which I'll discuss in a second. Or you get more advanced forms of infrastructure such as hydroponics and even aeroponics. Now those options, the hydroponics and aeroponics, require capital infrastructure, and they also require deeper levels of understanding and knowledge. So they are what we don't see those as being applicable for you as a survivor urban farmer. We see the small containers and the raised bed gardens as suitable technologies for you. Right, have a look at this picture which I took in Botswana. Notice the lack of any form of vegetation. And then when I drove past one house and I snapped away, look what I saw. There are pots, basically containers with plants in. There is a shade cloth. This is a very hot area. Many places in South Africa won't require it, but if you do have shade cloth, it won't hurt to put that up as well. Bear in mind, you need drainage in all those pots. In other words, you need holes in the bottom of them so that the water drains out. Otherwise, you will simply drown your plants. Okay, let's talk about the square foot gardening method. This was a form of growing crops developed or invented by Mel Bartholomew from America, who was a civil engineer. And that's where this word square foot garden comes from, because the Americans work with the imperial system, where we work with the metric system. So a foot is about 30.5 centimeters. So a square foot is 30.5 centimeters lengthways and 30.5 meters breadthways. And the whole principle is that you plant your seedlings in these grids in predefined ways. I will get to that in a moment, but let's just look at why we feel that raised beds, particularly using the square foot garden approach, is good for urban survivor farmers. Firstly, we can control the growing medium. So what we put into the box, we can control, and that helps determine the success of our crops. We can plant on hard surfaces, because all we do is we put the box on the hard surface and then we put the growing medium inside. These boxes yield very good returns. The raised beds drain very well. The drainage is very important. Raised beds allow the sun to heat the soil well. Just think about the sun rays hitting the side of that box there, heating the soil up and helping to boost the growth of those crops. There are clear rules that Mel has worked out regarding plant spacing, bearing in mind that not all the crops have got the same size root system and leaf system. So Mel has worked out what works, how many seeds to plant in one grid, but we'll get to that in a second. There are also clear rules on companion planting. Less bending is needed. There's very few weeds. The weeds can't get in there easily. Less water is required. And the materials that you require to build these are available. You can use old pallets, bricks, stones, etc. to make these raised beds. There are also many videos and articles about square foot gardening on the internet. And we are hoping that you add your stories to the internet as well. So here's an example of the planting guide. And what you're seeing is pictures and wording of the different types of veggies. And then the number is representing how many seeds go into a box. So for example, the dill, 9 seeds can go into one of those square foot areas. Whereas onions also have 9, bush beans have 4, basil has 2, etc., etc. Okay, we now have a container, but what do we put inside that? What growing media we use? And bear in mind on the wording that we use in growing media, not necessarily just soil. Consider those technologies that we had. The hydroponics doesn't use any soil at all. It uses pretty much water, and the aeroponics as well. Whereas the square foot garden and the containers can use soil and compost or potting soil. So again, our focus is on the simpler technologies which are applicable to persons with less knowledge and less financial resources. Okay, so what do you need to make compost? Compost can be made with scraps, organic scraps, leaves, twigs, grass cuttings, and water. And you mix these together in a ratio and you keep turning them, and Mother Nature via microorganisms changes those into compost. We will be making a video specifically dedicated to compost making, which will be available on the Farm for Real website. What you need then next is a good location or space to grow your crops, and in that you need to consider sunshine. You also need to, of course, consider not being in the way of people walking so that the crops get damaged and a whole bunch of things. So let's plant the veggies where there is lots of sunshine, at least 6 hours or more. Avoid areas that are in shade for too long. Then let's consider water. Municipal water has chlorine in it. Chlorine is used to kill the bacteria in the water, but this is not good for our crops. Crops can still use it, but it's better not to have the chlorine in there. It's quite easy to get the chlorine out. All you do is you pour the water in a bucket and let it stand for a day or two, and the chlorine will dissipate. Then you can use the water. How do you water? Well, it's as simple. Just take a glass or a jug and scoop out the water and then apply it to the base of the plant. Try and get the water to the deep roots. So pour the water so that it goes all the way down so that the roots chase after the water. You want a good healthy root system. It's best to water the plants in the morning. The reason is that if you water the plants at night, some of the water might move past the roots. The other thing is that in the morning, as the sun comes up and that plant starts sucking up the water is there ready to go. Water your crops 3 to 5 times a week, depending on the weather. Fertilizer. I won't go into this too much detail, but essentially if you take your compost and you have worms produce the best fertilizer known to man. And those worms can also help you with your organic scraps, so you don't throw those on the landfill, and we don't create unnecessary methane gas. So read up about earthworms. We'll also try and put some material on the Farm for Real website about worms. Red wrigglers are the ones that they use to eat the compost, but there are many different types of worms, and they are all good. In terms of insect repellents, once your crops are growing, there are many different variations of mixes that you can do to apply on the crops to scare these chojos away. In this example, you take a teaspoon of olive oil, teaspoon of dish soap, 1 gallon of water. This is obviously from an American website, which is 3.8 liters. You mix them together and you spray that mixture onto the leaves, underneath the leaves, or you apply it with a sponge. But take a look on the website. Some people use pepper, some people use garlic. There are many different options and the ingredients are readily available. Okay, so continually remind yourself, if it is to be, it is up to me. Urban Survivor farmers, get started today. Good luck with your journey. Happy planting, happy learning, and we wish you all the very best. And we want to hear about you and see your pictures. Please send them to our website or email me on andrew@farm4real.com. All the very best, folks.